Hi guys, it's Paula and I hope you are doing well. I threw it out in my Pan That Palette update that maybe I should do a video talking about what I'm thinking about panning for 2020, and several of you said yes, please do that video, so here I am today. I hadn't even been thinking about Pan That Palette for 2020, not once this year, which is amazing because at this time last year, I'd already been thinking about what I was gonna pan for 2019 for about 4 months. So it says a lot as to how this year is going, how much I'm enjoying my Pan That Palette. I'm not bored with it. And at this time last year, I was already kind of sick of my Pan That Palette. It wasn't until one of you mentioned in a comment, am I gonna do this video again? And I thought, when did I do it last year? And I realized I did it towards the end of July. So here we are again, beginning of August, and I'm doing this video again since you guys seem to like it. Now, even though I haven't been thinking much about Pan That Palette for 2020, there are a few things I've been obsessively thinking about. And the first thing is that I've been so inspired by Emily's Graveyard Project Pan. And I realized that I want 2020 to be 1 year-long graveyard project pan. I just want to clean up everything I have previously started working on and move it out. That's the goal. We'll see. I don't think about it every single day, but when I'm doing my inventory, it is unbelievably frustrating to see my Pan That Palette from 2017 and my Pan That Palette from 2018 staring back at me, because these should be gone. They were my Pan That Palette. I should have panned them in the years that I had them in the project. But once that year was up, I gave myself a break, which was appropriate because I was pretty sick of using them and I never got back to finishing them. If you've never seen it, this is what my Pan That Palette for 2017 looked like. This is the Too Faced Natural Face palette. It was all face products. I wasn't ready to commit to eyeshadows in 2017. These 4 pans were all cream products, so thank goodness they're gone and I finished them off, but I still have a powder bronzer and a powder blush that is still going strong. Even after a year, I never hit pan on this little itty bitty blush. Yeah, these need to go in 2020. And of course, you guys are probably familiar with my Pan That Palette from 2018 because I keep the shadows from my baby Pan That Palette in here still. So a lot of these are close to being gone. I think I could knock this out in a couple months. I think I could knock this out in a couple months. There's not much product left, and I would love to finish this off in 2020 and get rid of this whole thing. So Emily from Emily and Max inspired a lot of these thoughts that I've been having. She has a YouTube channel here and an Instagram page. You can find her at Emily and Max, and not and. I will leave her channel link down below. So I still want to do Pan That Palette though. I still want to do baby Pan That Palette. I still want to do Pan That Palette. And I want to finish everything that has been lingering from previous project pans and Pan That Palettes that never got finished. So how can I do it all? The answer is with a smaller palette. Now, the rules for qualifying for a baby Pan That Palette are that they have 5 or less pans in them. So anything that has 2, 3, 4, or 5 pans is technically, according to my own made-up rules, a baby Pan That Palette. So what could be a Pan That Palette? Well, that would be a 6-pan palette, or a small 7-pan palette, or a very small 8-pan palette. And that's kind of where I'm going for next year. A small 6, 7, 8, 9-pan palette that is more manageable. Yeah, that's where I'm going. Now, the Fantastic Ladies have not announced their Pan That Palette theme for 2020. So all of this could change between now and the end of the year. I might go with one of these, I might go with none of these. Time will tell once I have all the information I need to make my decision. But this is what I'm thinking right now as of the beginning of August of 2019 for Pan That Palette. There are 14 small palettes I have pulled. Let me show you what they are. Some of these are quite old and some of these are on the newer side. I haven't decided which route I want to go as far as age. Part of me wants to always work on the older stuff and part of me thinks, well, this year I picked some really old shadows. Maybe next year I'll pick a newer palette and then go back to some older shadows. I often like to do that when I'm picking products for projects. switch from oldest to newest to oldest to newest and kind of enjoy some of the newer ones and then go back to some of the older ones. So I have a mix of both old and new in this selection. The first two I've pulled are very similar but are from different brands. I have the shimmer strips from Physicians Formula and the touch tones from Kardashian Beauty. They both have pinky tones in them. Maybe I should take the lids off so it's not glaring right back at you. Okay, so here they are side by side. They're very similar. I do not need both in my collection. Both are basically unused. I feel like I've never really used either of these on my eyes. This one is the shimmer strips for hazel eyes. This is the touch tones in it just says gradient eye color set. I could pan either of these and I don't think I'd ever miss it. Kardashian Beauty isn't even around anymore. Yeah. So both of those are up for consideration. If you were wondering, this one says it has 0.18 ounces and this one says it has 0.26 ounces. So this one has almost double the amount of product as this one, even though they're both 9-pan palettes. Yep, they're both 9-pan palettes. This one is almost twice as much product as this one. Okay, the next palette I am considering for Pan That Palette 2020 is another little guy that I've never touched. This is the Vizia Art Petite Pro. This is the number 2, I believe. Yeah, Pro 2. I got this when it was on sale from Sephora last year. I've never used it. It looks like this. Sorry. These are the kind of colors that I love. I think I could get about 3 different looks out of this palette, if not more. There's a nice mix of matte and shimmer, which works well. And these pans are small and manageable. There are actually 0.28 ounces in this palette. Even though it's so tiny, there's 8 pans. This is actually the most product out of the 3 that we've looked at so far. The next 2 palettes I am considering for Pan That Palette 2020. The next 2 palettes I am strongly considering for Pan That Palette 2020 are these 2. I wouldn't pick both, I'd pick one or the other. I'd be leaning towards this one. These are both the e.l.f. Aqua Beauty eyeshadow palettes. They are 6-pan palettes with like a cream to powder consistency. This one is Island Breeze. This is the one I am really feeling right now. It looks like this. And there's a nice mix of colors and neutrals. I definitely think I could pan this next year. And I'd rather pan it now before it dries up and goes bad. Because like I said, these shadows almost feel like there's some moisture to them. But they're powder. They're just like, kind of like that Colorpop consistency that you don't want to dry out. And then of course here I have the Cool Mist palette. I don't know if I could pan a dark blue, but I love the, I love this duochrome shade right here. This is like a blue-brown, and those are my jam, so I would probably pan it just for that, but I don't know if I'd get sick of this if this was my Pan That palette. I'd prefer the one with the reds and the greens and the lighter browns. The next palette I'm considering for Pan That Palette 2020 is this guy right here. This is my one and only Marc Jacobs palette. This is the Provocateur. It looks like this. Some pretty good neutrals with a pop of pink and purple. I think there's a nice mix of matte and shimmer. I think there's a nice mix of light, medium, and deep. I think this would make a really good Pan That palette for next year. And this was kind of the inspiration for my whole line of thinking, was this palette right here. I should pan that Marc Jacobs palette that cost a ridiculous amount of money that I've never used even once. That's where my thinking was. Okay, the next palette I'm considering is the Colorpop Pretty Much palette. This is a 6-pan pressed pigment palette. It looks like this. These colors are my jam. I don't think I would ever get sick of this. I bought this to try and get the Lila palette out of my system. It didn't work in the end. I bought the Lila palette too, but now that I have that, I probably don't need this and I should pan it. I would like to pan it. I've never used this even once, but I do like Colourpop shadows in general. All right, this is an oldie. This is probably one of my very first high-end purchases. It was a total impulse buy. I walked into a Sephora looking for something, but I didn't know what, and this is what I walked out with. This is a Lorac palette. I don't remember what it was called. There's no name on it, but there was this drawer that came in it with a brush, and there was maybe a primer also in there, an eyeshadow primer. And then this is a palette right here. It's basically a neutral and cool tone palette. But I love these kind of shades like this. I love this silver. I love a taupey silver. These four here are mostly shimmer. This one's more of a satin, and then this one's like a matte with glitter in it that I would probably use as an eyeliner every day of the year. This is really old though, and I'd like to use it up. Okay, up next is my Buxom palette in Dolly's Wild Side. I wanted this so bad, but I've never used it. A lot of similar colors that you've seen in some of these palettes. A lot of these palettes have a pop of purple in them. I still love purple. I could get a solid neutral look. I love this shimmery shade right here. It looks like a beautiful lid shade. And I've never used this one either. It's brand new. All right. I'm gonna be the first person to admit that this purchase was a mistake. It's an old purchase, but I'm still living with it. This is the e.l.f. Beauty Journal in Smoky Look. I don't know if I got this off of Haute Look or if I bought it at a grocery store or what, but it was a bad buy. But that being said, I think these eyeshadows, I think these eyeshadows have potential. Purples, neutrals, I think I could make it work. For the amount of pans, there's only 6 pans. This is a big bulky thing. If this isn't my Pan That palette for next year, I will definitely depot it into one of my Z palettes so that I could get rid of this bulky packaging, because this is ridiculous. I don't need this kind of packaging in my life. This is excessive. It's actually quite thick too. So it not only takes up a lot of space this way, but it takes up a lot of space this way. So either this will be my Pan That palette, or I'm just gonna depot these and put them into an empty Z palette. I don't have an empty Z palette right now. That's the whole reason why I'm working on a Z palette this year, is to make space in my Z palette to depot some more stuff. Okay, I have my last 4 palettes right in front of me. 2 of them are older, 2 of them are newer. Let me show you the older ones. This is another Physicians Formula palette, but there's only 6 pans in this one, and they're all very shimmery and glittery and sparkly. It's basically an entire palette of lid shades. These are a little bit creamy and soft. They look a little bit beat up, but I have a feeling that's more from Hazel than me using them. I feel like I've never really used this palette on my eyes before. But I think it would be really fun to work on this while incorporating some mattes or whatever in with this to create a look. And it's getting old, so I'd like to move it out. Another oldie is this Enhancing Eyes from BH Cosmetics. This is actually a 12 pan palette. I know it doesn't look like it, it's super tiny, but yes, it is a 12 pan palette. This was for gorgeous green eyes. Now, I do not have green eyes, but I was just so drawn to the colors in this palette. I was drawn to the packaging. When I saw this online, I thought this was going to be the size of a Naked palette. It is not. Maybe that's a good thing, but it is so tiny, and these are the shadows inside. I think I have used this, but it's been years since I've used it. But I love the colors in this palette. The amount of product in this palette I think was originally written down here, but it has rubbed off and I cannot read it at all. I am trying to. I think it says 0.55 ounces, so that's actually a respectable amount of product, not even close to what I have in my Pan That palette for this year. But this wouldn't be easy for me to pan either. Okay, and the last two palettes that I'm considering for Pan That Palette 2020 are two newer palettes. The first one is the City Mini from Maybelline. This was a collaboration with Shayla. I have never used this palette either. It looks like this, but it's got the required pop of purple that I seem to be looking for my Pan That palette of 2020. And finally, another never used before palette. This is the Too Faced White Chocolate Chip palette. I watched Erin pan this last year, and from watching her pan it, it made me want this palette so bad. So I went out and bought it at a Too Faced sale. And this is what it looks like. And this has 0.25 ounces of product in it. So again, pretty small. I kind of feel like I could do it. All right, guys, those are all the palettes that I'm considering as of today for Pan That Palette 2020. I know it's a lot. I know I'm going to have to narrow it down quite a bit before the end of the year. I also know that there are several variables that can change my decision completely between now and the end of the year, but I thought it would be fun to see what I'm thinking as of today and to share that with you guys. Let me know in the comments down below which palette you think I should pan for 2020. This isn't an official voting poll, but I'm just curious to see what you guys are thinking after I've showed you all of these smaller palettes that I still have in my collection. It is amazing how many of these have never been used. Out of the 14, I've only used 1, 2 before. 2 have been used. The other 12 have never been used before, ever, on my eyes. All right. That's crazy. If my Pan That palette for next year ends up being one of these, I will probably narrow it down to 3 of them and let you guys vote on which one I should pan. I think that would be a lot of fun. We always have fun when we do the voting. I love it. But that's it for now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.